Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Addie, and today we are doing my January and February reading wrap up. And I decided that I think I'm gonna start doing like it bi-monthly and do 2 months in each of my wrap ups, just because I feel like I'll have more to talk about. And I never like doing the monthly ones because I feel like, oh, like I don't have enough books, and then I'm like racing to get enough books read for like the video, and like I just want to enjoy the books that I'm reading, and I don't want to feel like I'm like boom 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 trying to get it for like numbers. So I feel like with 2 months I have a ton of books to talk about, so this is how I think I'm gonna do it. We're trying it out. So this is my January and February reading wrap up. I feel like they were both pretty good reading months. February was a fabulous reading month for me. It was a short month, but I read a lot of really great books. January was kind of meh for me, and I feel like February I kind of got my groove back in for the year, so I really liked that. Let's just get into talking about the books. So for these first few books, the January books, I do not have them here with me because I read them at home over winter break, so I will just be putting a picture up. But the first book I read was Before the Coffee Gets Cold by, I think the name is Toshikazu Kawaguchi, and if I said that wrong, please let me know. But Before the Coffee Gets Cold is a series that I started, and I've only read the first one so far, but I really am enjoying it. It is a super interesting concept where basically it's about this little coffee shop in Japan, and people who go there, you can ask to go back in time to any point in time. However, there's a ton of really intricate, like interesting rules about it that like it's almost not worth it to do it unless like it's a very niche case. And so a lot of people like don't really see the point in it. It follows the same people who are in the coffee shop, but it follows them as certain storylines of people who do go in past and do this. And the one really big stipulation is you can go back in time, but you have to come back before the coffee you're served gets cold, so you don't get a ton of time either. But it's a really unique and interesting concept that I really like. A lot of really magical realism, which I loved. I want to read more like translated works, and I really enjoyed this one. Like, it was a very slow read, but also a very beautiful one. Like, I feel like all the stories wove together really nicely, even though they were about different people. I rated this book 4 stars because it was a little slow, but I do see the potential of like loving it through the rest of the series. I loved the premise. I loved the characters. It was just kind of like sweet and wholesome. There were some really funny parts and really sad parts, and it was just a really well-rounded story, and I loved it. And I love that I'm reading more like translated works, so overall, very good read. The next book I read was The Blood That Divides Us by Marcelina Lebeau. This was actually a really exciting read for me because this was the first ARC I have ever received. So thank you, Marcelina, for that ARC. Was so excited to get into this, and it was a really fun read. It kind of combines a little bit like Good Girl's Guide to Murder-esque vibes to it, but also some dark romance vibes to it. It's really interesting. It's about this girl who's kind of quiet in high school, and she just wants to read her dark romance books, but one day at school one of their classmates was murdered, and her best friend has a true crime podcast, and because of a controversial episode, her best friend is now the prime suspect. So now the main character, Alyssa, has to work with a guy she hates and her academic rival, Mateo, to solve the case for her best friend. But he knows a little bit more about this case than he probably should know about it for peace of mind, and he's a little suspicious himself, and it's very enemies to lovers, and they're very much enemies at this point. So it was really quick, really fast-paced. My only problem with it is I felt like the writing could have been a little bit cleaner, I feel like I could have gone for a little bit tighter editing. But if you're into like those YA mysteries, I do feel like this is a fun one to check out. If you're interested in reading a new author, this is a really fun, fast-paced read. And I think I rated it set 2.75, 3 stars-ish range. And then I read The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. When I read this, I had the most beautiful copy of this book. It was the Barnes & Noble exclusive. It had the beautiful sprayed edges, but the sprayed edges were like flames, and with the Barnes & Noble exclusive there was illustrations throughout, which I feel like really enhanced my reading experience. And I definitely feel like it was a special edition that I 100% recommend investing in, especially if you're a fan of R.F. Kuang, because some special editions are just like, oh, like a little bonus chapter, or you get like those, just the sprayed edges, but like this had like the beautiful illustrations that completely enhanced the reading experience, which I adored. So good. So this book is about a girl, Rin, and Rin is a war orphan, and she lives with her foster family in super low poverty, illicit activities going on where she is, and her foster family is not the nicest to her, and they just kind of want to marry her off and get her booted away, which she does not want. She's an independent girl. She's like, I don't want to be married off to this gross old man. So she's like, my only hope is to take this test and hopefully be able to join the military or go on to higher things so I don't have to rely on these people anymore. The only way that she'd be able to do it is if she tested into the top military academy, because that one is free and her family will not pay for anything else. So she has to test into the top, which is, the whole country is vying for it, and everyone there is like, you are out of your mind, you're not going to get there in 2 years, and people have been training for this their whole lives, and she's like, no, I'm gonna do it. And she works her butt off for 2 years, and she does the most extreme study methods I've ever seen in my life, and tests in to this elite military academy. But the story follows her as she goes through this, and it's dark. It is way darker than your average fantasy read. She struggles with racism, with sexism, classism throughout her time here, because everyone here is basically just rich kids who have had all the resources in the world given to them. On top of that, this country is on the brink of war, and she is at a war academy, and it's just so amazing fantasy read. One of the best fantasy reads I've ever read. It delves into some really real topics in such an amazing world, and I feel like Rin was such a complex character as well, because she was not perfect. She could be stubborn, she could be angry, she could be impetuous. She was so resilient, and it was showing like that female resilience throughout, and I really loved that. And I gave it 4.5 because I feel like the story kind of lulled a little bit in the middle, but that was my literal only complaint. I loved this book so much, and I'm so excited to continue on with the series. Do warn you, look at trigger warnings please before reading this, because this is not like your average like fantasy war. Like, it gets dark into the nitty-gritties and the dark underbellies of war, and it can be really disturbing to read about, and I do urge you to look at trigger warnings before reading. And then I decided that I really needed to hop back into the world of Veronica Speedwell, and I'm so glad I did. I read A Murderous Relation, which is the 5th installment in the Veronica Speedwell series, and this was so good, as they always are so good. I love the Veronica Speedwell series, and the way I just love Veronica and Stoker going on their little adventures, going on their little doing their little shenanigans, trying to solve mysteries, and it's so good. This book was interesting too, because this is set around the same time as like Jack the Ripper. They kind of incorporate that a little bit into the book, and it makes it feel like so real, and like it kind of adds like a little bit, another element of like darkness to it, which was so good. This time they are in deep with some very powerful people, and some powerful person asks them to solve a mystery for them, and once again they get themselves in a bit of trouble. I just love the way Veronica and Stoker communicate. It's so funny to me. I just will always love Veronica Speedwell because she's just my independent girl. Like, she needs no man, and it's so interesting to read about that dynamic in like the late 1800s, because that was like wasn't really a huge thing or talked about thing. I just love these books. I don't want to say too much because it is the 5th book in the series, but this one was definitely a little bit darker than her other books, which I did really enjoy. A little spookier vibes, a little darker vibes, which I will always enjoy, always love. Also, we're finally getting some crumbs of a Veronica and Stoker romance. Once again, I live for the crumbs, I really do. And we got some new characters this one, which they were so funny and just quirky as always, and I just love them so much. And oh, I love this series. Only 4 more books. Oh, hi Ro. Only 4 more books left in to go, and I'm like very much stretching it out as far as I possibly can. But yeah, I think I rated this book 4 stars. It wasn't as good as A Dangerous Collaboration, in my opinion, but still a very good installment of the series. Also, I'm so sorry, it's like partly cloudy outside, so the sun is like is continuously going in and out, so it will get really light and really dark, and so I'm sorry about that. Around 4 stars. Loved this book. And then I read Beg, Borrow, or Steal, which was the new Sarah Adams book and the 3rd in the interconnected standalone series like When in Rome, and I absolutely loved this one. Like, bring cute little romances back like this. Like, she does cute little romances so well, and I love the When in Rome series. It is a great little small town romance, and it's so wholesome and so fun and so cute. I think I still liked Practice Makes Perfect a little bit more than this. One thing I liked is it was between 2 teachers, and I am trying to be a teacher, so really liked that aspect of it. And it's kind of an academic rivals to lovers, and it spans throughout like the whole, like pretty much their whole adult lives. Like, they meet in college and they're academic rivals, and then they end up working at the same school. And Emily grew up in Rome, Kentucky, and it's like her place, her domain, and Jack has left to go marry his fiance, and Emily feels like some type of way about that, but she's supposed to hate him, so she kind of ignores that. And he comes back fiance-less to Rome and starts teaching at the school with her, and she's like, no, this is my life, my domain, get out. And he's like, I can teach here if I want to. On top of that all, they are neighbors, so we have some forced proximity there as well. This reminds me a lot of Gilmore Girls. The town reminds me so much of Gilmore Girls, which I love. The townspeople are so quirky and so funny because they're always so invested in like each other's love lives, which is hilarious. And I really resonated with Emily as well, because she kind of embodied what it means to like have like a need to be needed, which I absolutely identified with, and I loved that about her. Also, she could be a little angry sometimes, and she could have a temper, and she wasn't the easiest nut to crack. And I really liked watching how Jack Bennett, our main character, was able to get through that, and I just love the progression. I just love the progression of their love story in this. It was just so good, so beautiful, and I love myself a cute little romance like this. It was so good. Again, this was a 4-star read. Really great romance. I think I liked Practice Makes Perfect a little bit more. But this book did set up for the final and 4th book in the series that's gonna come out hopefully soon, because I think that one I'm gonna be interested in, because it's like a childhood like friends to lovers, which is a great trope. And like, this man has been pining for 3 books now, and I'm very excited for them to get their story. I'm just so excited for that. And then I think we all know what came out in January, which I immediately got my hands on, was Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. Okay, am I like a huge Fourth Wing fan? No. Like, I love the first one. I don't know. I've just never really been super big on that bandwagon. However, will I pick up every single book that comes out? Yeah. It's a fun little romantasy, and I love the dragons, and I love the romance, and I love the main character. But do I think it's anything really special? No. And that was kind of my thoughts on this one. Kind of continued my thoughts on that. I don't want to say too much, again, because it is a 3rd book in a series and a highly anticipated one at that, so I don't want to be the one that spoils you. But I love Violet, and I love Xaden, and one thing I do really like about this is the chronic illness rep in it, because I am chronically ill, and I do like seeing a character that I can identify with on that level, especially in a fantasy book, because I feel like you don't see that a lot in fantasy reads. Like, all the girls are tough and strong and like that, but I feel like I can't identify with that as much, and I really like that about Violet. And the romance is always great. The romance is better in this one than in the second. So if you weren't liking the miscommunication and like issues in the second one, I feel like they were pretty rock solid in this one. I feel like the romance was pretty good in this one. My only issue with it is that like there'd be some chapters where like I was so in it, I'm like, oh my god, this is a 5-star read, I'm loving this, oh my god, and then it'll go right back just to being kind of boring and blah, and I'm like, ugh, I don't care. Also, one thing I do have an issue, I always appreciate, it's not an issue because authors are not required to do this by any means. However, I always appreciate when there are long release times in between books, which there should be. Authors should be taking their time to like get it right and make something and take their time. But if you're gonna do that, it's been since 2023 since I've read the second book. Give me some context, please. Just like a lick of context over like who these random ass people are. And I always appreciate when the authors are like, oh, this person, when blah 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 happened, you know? And like, I feel like I was a little lost with all the names and everything going on in here. So I wish we had a little bit more of that. However, not a huge deal. But yeah, I loved the dragons. The plot was pretty good too. Also, other issue I had is like, you know, in fantasy books there's always like this big enemy that they're trying to defeat. And I feel like this enemy was defeated pretty damn quickly. It was like, oh, and I was like, oh. You know, like it wasn't like what I wanted out of it. So, I don't know. I rated this 3.75 stars. I had a fun time while I was reading it. I haven't really thought about it since, and I feel like some parts I really loved and some parts I didn't so much love. So, which is kind of the theme of how I feel about these books. And then I wanted to mention, I did like read The Long Game, but I read 100 pages of it and DNF'd it. So this was a DNF for me. I just really didn't love this book. I just got really annoyed with the main character kind of quite often, and both of the main characters, and this was just not a story that I cared to continue reading because I knew it wasn't going to be over a 2-star. So, and I was just bored. Didn't like it. I don't want to talk about it too much because I didn't read the whole thing, but lead was not making me feel any type of way. And I just didn't care what happened to her, so I just didn't keep reading. And then I read Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys, and I really liked this one. This is a World War II book about this that follows 4 main characters during the event of the Wilhelm Gustave, which is a German warship sinkage during World War II, and like so much more deaths than like the Titanic, but like it's never talked about, and I didn't even know that like this was a piece of history during World War II, and I feel like it really like opened my eyes to like different parts of the war and that I've never learned about. So like really enjoyed learning a different perspective. It was also it followed these 4 characters all from like different countries and all leading them onto this German warship for different reasons, and it was really interesting to read about. I rated it 4 stars only because as much as I loved it, I really only cared about the female character chapters. I really loved them. I was really invested in their story, but the other 2 I just didn't really care all that much. The ending was so sad though. So, but like, so good. It was also interesting to get a perspective like of like German refugees like during the war who like didn't like agree with what Germany was doing at the time, but like they were still like living under his rule, and I feel like no one ever talks about that, and like it was interesting to get some of that perspective as well, and also perspective from like other countries and other circumstances. And I just feel like these 4 characters like stories really weave together really seamlessly and really great, and the writing was beautiful, the story overall was beautiful, and I loved this book. So definitely recommend it if you're into historical fiction. And this is also a YA book, so it was a little bit easier to digest, I feel, than a lot of adult historical fictions. And then I decided to get a little bit back into the world of Stormlight, and I had a lot of fun. This is a little novella in between Words of Radiance and Oathbringer, and I really like this. It follows one of the characters that we see during one of the interlude chapters in Words of Radiance. It was interesting to learn a little bit more about her, and I think she's going to be a really big part in the books to come. Much to my dismay though. I don't like this girl. I feel like, okay, not to like spoil. I don't think this is a spoiler at all. Her big thing is that she doesn't want to grow up. So she asks the queen to like never grow up. So like she's basically a teenage woman acting like a 10-year-old, and I just don't find it endearing. I find it kind of annoying. Also, like she has these powers, and she says awesome probably 20 million times throughout this book. She's like, time to use my awesomeness, time to be awesome. Everything is just awesome, and I'm like, this is just getting so annoying, and I don't know, it just bugged me. I did not like that aspect. I think I just was like irked by it, and I don't know why. It wasn't a big deal, but it still really annoyed me. But I'm glad I read it because like, yeah, you have to understand to read Oathbringer, which I will be probably picking up in a month or two, hopefully. I do love this world. I love the Stormlight world, so that was really fun, and I love Brandon Sanderson's writing, so I overall enjoyed the book. It was just a lot of like little things that irked me like that. So I rate this like 3 stars. Also, it was a novella, so I feel like I can never really rate novellas high, but I will say Brandon Sanderson, I've read a lot of his novellas. He does a really good job of creating a really well fleshed out story into a very small space. Like, I've read a 50-page novella by him that I was entranced by and loved, and I feel like he does a lot with little amounts of time, and he also does a great job with large amounts of time. Like, he's good at his pacing and development despite page count is phenomenal. He knows how to develop a story for how long it's going to be. I really like that about him. I feel like this was really great book, and some things just really annoyed me, and I didn't love the main character, and I know it was supposed to be like quirky, but like it irked me. too much work for me. Yeah, I'm glad I read it though, because now I can get to Oathbringer whenever I want. And then I read my first 5-star of the year. Thank God, because I was fiending for one, and it was Beartown by Frederick Backman. Loved this book. It was 5 stars. I immediately had my mom read it. I have never read a Frederick Backman book, but all I've been hearing incessantly is it's the writing. His writing's beautiful. His writing's amazing. And I'm like, guys, how good can it be? And it was that good. It was so good. This book is a really interesting concept because it's set in this really small town in Alaska called Beartown, and the economic state of this town pretty much really heavily relies on this boys hockey team. And it kind of shows throughout the book how raising these little boys as like gods in this town, because they so heavily rely on them, puts so much pressure on these kids, and it has some really catastrophic outcomes that is seen to a young girl in this book, and then it follows her trying to grapple with that. And then it kind of talks about like what's right and what, like sometimes how what's doing right isn't as easy or as straightforward as you think it's gonna be. And I feel like it kind of takes a lot of like real world issues and puts them in a really small town, which spotlights them even more and makes it so much more apparent, like the ways we treat women, the ways we treat each other. And it was just a really beautiful story, and I couldn't recommend it enough. Check trigger warnings though for it as well. So as much as I love that one, I needed a little fun, a little whimsy after that, and I decided to read The Ornithologist's Field Guide to Love, which is a historical romance with a little bit of fantasy, a little bit of magical realism in here, and I really enjoyed this book. I rated this 4 stars. I felt like this was just what I needed at the given moment. This book reminded me a lot of Veronica Speedwell and Emily Wilde Encyclopedia of Fairies, and I really liked that, obviously, because I love Emily Wilde and her Encyclopedia of Fairies. But this one is, she studies birds, and it's academic rivals. Basically, there is this contest for Birder of the Year, and to be Birder of the Year, you have to find this magic bird that everyone's vying for, and super rare. There's only one of them, so they're all running around trying to find this bird. So their names are Beth and Devin and Beth are forced to get together and team up for this competition, but there is some foul play going on. So many rivals that's going on. It is so good. It's so cute. There's just so much whimsy. Like, it's just so much fun. Like, and this man was down bad for her the whole book, which I adored, as always, because like, as he should be. And she was so sweet and so kind, and I could see why he was down bad for her. And they were both just so determined to get Birder of the Year. And it was funny because like, they were so determined, and they were like, no, I'm not thinking about them. I'm thinking about Birder of the Year. But then they'll be like maybe I am thinking about them, but I'm not though. And I just, I loved it. I love the longing, I love the pining, and I love like the late 1800s. It's like a time period too. It was just a great read, and I feel like this came at a perfect time for me, and I highly recommend this if you're a fan of Emily Wilde and Veronica Speedwell. So then I had another 5-star read, Crazy, 2 in February, which was amazing. I read Firefly Lane by Kristen Hanna, which never had a non-5-star read from her. I love her so much. She does it again. I'm so excited to watch the show. So this book follows 2 best friends throughout the course of their entire like lives, starting at like 14 to like their adult lives, and it is phenomenal. And I feel like this book really touched on the intricacies of female friendship, and I absolutely loved that. And I feel like it was done really, really, really well. And I was able to really see myself in both Tully and Kate, especially Kate, throughout this book. And it was just, it made me cry so hard at the end. Honestly, for half this book, like, I did not think I was gonna give it 5 stars. And then at the end, if you watch my vlog from last week, I was sobbing so hard. This book really got me. It kind of starts in like 1974 with their friendship and goes till like now, and it was interesting too because it like kind of incorporated different parts of like current events during this timeline as well, because they want to be news reporters, which was really interesting to read about, because Kristen Hanna always kind of talks about like what's going on in the world throughout her books, which I'm glad, because this book wasn't like a war book like we got with like, there was the Vietnam War had a big part to do with Great Alone, and then obviously World War II during the Nightingale. And I feel like I liked that she was able to incorporate some of the current events into this book as well. But yeah, overall, beautiful writing. Kristen Hanna does it again. I don't want to yap too long about this because I talked for way too long about it in the vlog, but really beautiful display and representation of female friendship, and I love her. I love her so much. Perfect. And then the last book I read in February was Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales, and I don't want to say too much about this because I have a reading vlog coming of this in a week, so I'm not gonna like get into the nitty-gritties of this in this video like I have with the other books, but I will say I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. And I cannot contain myself anymore to talk about it. I love Emily Wilde. This is the end of the series and I'm so sad it's over. This is definitely going to be one of the series I need to do a reread of because the writing is beautiful. I just love her so much. And I'm just so sad that it's over. But I'm very happy that I read it and that it happened, because this is one of my new favorite series of all time and I love it. I really hope there's like a novella or something that comes out of this. But yeah. Reading vlog comes out next week. I don't want to talk too much about it, but so good. So good. So this was my February and January wrap up. I really liked this. I feel like I got to talk about a lot more books, and I hope you guys enjoyed that as well. I know I have reading vlogs for most of these books, so I hope you guys still enjoyed the wrap-ups for those of you who don't watch the vlogs, because they are lengthy and long and I yap a lot. Thank you guys so much for watching this week's video. If you have any video suggestions for me or any videos you want to see from me, please comment them down below. If you like me or my channel, please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to see more content from me, my other socials are linked in the description. Thank you guys as always so much again for watching. I appreciate you guys each and every day, and I just love chatting with you guys. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have the most fabulous week, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!